The Echo of Humanity, Part 1. The Silent Signal. Dr. Sarah Chen stared into the swirling patterns of dark matter displayed across the ESS Starweaver's observation deck. The massive window, spanning the entire front of the deck, showed more than just stars. It revealed the invisible threads that held the universe together. 3 years into their mission to map dark matter anomalies, the Starweaver's specialized sensors had revolutionized humanity's understanding of spacetime itself. Dr. Chen, you need to see this. Marcus Rodriguez's voice carried an unusual edge that made Sarah turn from her contemplation. The ship's quantum physicist rarely showed excitement, but now his hands trembled as they flew across his holographic interface. The dark matter waves. They're not random. Sarah moved to his station, her eyes narrowing as she studied the readings. The dark matter currents they'd been tracking had suddenly shifted, forming patterns that defied natural law. "Get the captain," she said quietly, her mind already racing through possibilities. "And wake up Dr. Patel. We're going to need our linguistics expert for this." Within minutes, Captain Helena Walsh strode onto the deck, her presence immediately commanding attention despite her small stature. "Report," she ordered, steel-gray eyes fixing on the main display where Marcus had projected his findings. "Captain, we're detecting what appears to be an artificial signal embedded in the dark matter waves," Sarah explained, highlighting specific patterns in the data. "It's like someone's been using the fundamental structure of spacetime as a communication medium." "Impossible," Dr. Patel muttered as he entered, still adjusting his glasses. "Dark matter manipulation requires energy levels beyond anything we've—" He trailed off as he saw the data. Oh my. The signal pulsed with increasing intensity, its patterns growing more complex. The crew worked in focused silence, their instruments recording terabytes of data every second. Then, without warning, space itself seemed to ripple. Multiple objects emerging from dark space. Lieutenant Kim's voice cut through the tension. Configuration unknown. Size massive. They watched in awe as crystalline structures materialized 2,000 kilometers off their port bow. The objects caught the light of distant stars, refracting it in impossible ways that made them seem both solid and ethereal at the same time. "We're being hailed," Communications Officer Jessica Torres announced, her fingers dancing across her console. "The signal. It's coming through our dark matter sensors, not conventional communications." Captain Walsh straightened her uniform. "Put it through." The sound that filled the bridge wasn't quite speech. It was more like crystal chimes forming patterns that somehow carried meaning. Dr. Patel's translation matrix hummed to life, struggling to process this entirely new form of communication. "We are the Silith," the translated voice finally emerged, carrying harmonics that made it sound both ancient and desperate. "We seek sanctuary. They follow. The Harbingers follow." "This is Captain Helena Walsh of the Earth science ship Starweaver. We're a research vessel. What exactly is following you?" There was a pause, and when the response came, the harmonic undertones had shifted to something that could only be described as fear, the end of all knowledge. "The destroyers of civilizations. We have fled across 12 galaxies, but they never stop, never tire. They harvest, then they destroy." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine as new data flooded her screens. The Silith ships were damaged, their crystalline structures showing signs of weapons fire that seemed to defy the laws of physics. But what caught her attention were the energy readings, technology so advanced it made humanity's greatest achievements look like stone tools in comparison. "Captain," Sarah said, her voice steady despite her racing heart, "their hull composition, it's responding to dark matter currents. I think their entire civilization has evolved to exist partially in dark space. That's how they've survived." The Silith transmission continued, urgency creeping into its harmonics. "We detected your vessel's dark matter experiments. You achieve what should be impossible with such primitive technology. How? We have watched many species rise and fall to the Harbingers, but none have ever manipulated dark matter with such crude tools yet achieved such results. Captain Walsh shared a look with her senior staff. Humanity had always known they were latecomers to the galactic stage, their technology centuries or millennia behind what they might find out there. But now, faced with beings who could travel through dark matter itself, their primitive approach might be exactly what made them unique. Perhaps, Walsh said carefully, we should have a longer conversation about these harbingers, and about why our primitive methods interest you so much. As if in response to her words, alarms suddenly blared across the ship. Lieutenant Kim's voice was tight with controlled fear. Captain, massive energy spike detecting. Something's coming through dark space. Something big. The Sylith transmission became frantic. They're here. The Harbingers have found us. Please, your ship, your methods, you may be the only hope left in this galaxy. Sarah watched as new contacts appeared on their sensors, their signatures unlike anything she'd ever seen. In that moment, she understood that the Starweaver's mission had changed forever. What had started as a scientific survey had just become humanity's first step into a war they never knew existed. A war for the very survival of consciousness itself. The Echo of Humanity. Part 2. The Knowledge Hunters. The crystalline beings who called themselves the Sylith towered over the human crew in the Starweaver's conference room. Their bodies shifted between solid and translucent states, internal lights pulsing in complex patterns that the translation matrix struggled to interpret. Dr. Patel had explained that the light patterns were actually a secondary form of communication, carrying emotional context their primary crystal tone language couldn't convey. The Harbingers, the lead Sylith, who called itself Echo of Lost Songs, explained, emerged from the spaces between galaxies 3,000 of your years ago. At first, we thought them simply another spacefaring species. We were wrong. Captain Walsh leaned forward, studying the holographic display Echo had created. It showed worlds, dozens of them, each one transformed into something that defied description. These were all civilizations they destroyed. No, Echo's lights flickered with what the translation matrix interpreted as deep sorrow. These were merely the worlds in our galaxy. They have done this across thousands of galaxies. They do not simply destroy, they harvest. They take all knowledge, all technology, all understanding a species has accumulated. Then they eliminate all trace of that civilization's existence. Dr. Chen, who had been analyzing data from the Sylith ships, looked up from her tablet. But why? What's the purpose? The answer came from a younger Sylith, Song of Breaking Dawn, its crystalline form vibrating with intensity. They believe knowledge itself is alive. That consciousness is a disease infecting the pure mathematics of space-time. They harvest our knowledge to understand how to better eliminate it. Each civilization they destroy makes them more efficient at destroying the next. Lieutenant Kim's tactical display suddenly lit up with warnings. The massive shapes they detected earlier were drawing closer, their energy signatures becoming clearer. Captain, we're getting better readings on the Harbinger vessels. They're not ships in any conventional sense. The main screen showed what appeared to be geometric shapes that shouldn't be able to exist in three-dimensional space, their edges bleeding into and out of reality itself. They moved with a precision that seemed to mock the very concept of physics. How do you fight something like that? Marcus wondered aloud, his physicist's mind already trying to understand the principles behind what he was seeing. Echo of Lost Songs moved to the center of the room, its crystalline form refracting light in complex patterns. We fought with everything we had. Our civilization had mastered dark matter manipulation, quantum engineering, even limited time dilation. None of it mattered. The Harbingers simply absorbed our technology, learned from it, and used it against us. But then something unexpected happened. Song of Breaking Dawn continued. When we encountered your vessel, we noticed something we had never seen before. Your dark matter experiments. They were creating patterns that the Harbingers couldn't predict or replicate. Dr. Chen pulled up the data from their original experiments. That doesn't make sense. Our technology is centuries behind yours. We can barely manipulate dark matter, let alone master it like you have." "Exactly." Echo's lights pulsed with what seemed like excitement. "Your methods are imperfect, inefficient. You achieve results through what we would consider broken mathematics and flawed physics. The Harbingers cannot process such chaos." Captain Walsh's eyes narrowed as understanding began to dawn. "Are you saying that our primitive technology might be our greatest advantage?" "Not just your technology." Song of Breaking Dawn moved closer to the display showing human brain scans. "Your minds, your consciousness. We have studied thousands of species across the galaxy. All of them, including us, evolved toward greater efficiency, more perfect patterns of thought. But humans." Dr. Patel, who had been quietly observing, suddenly straightened. "Our neural patterns, they're completely chaotic compared to yours, aren't they?" The Silas confirmation came as the ship's alarms blared again. Lieutenant Kim's voice was tense but controlled. "Captain, the Harbinger vessels are accelerating. They're launching some kind of probe toward us." "Shields up," Walsh ordered, but Echo of Lost Songs moved with surprising speed, its crystalline form pulsing with urgent patterns. "Your shields will not help. They are sending a consciousness probe. They will attempt to access your ship's computer systems, your crew's minds. This is how they begin their harvest." But as the probe's energy signature washed over the Starweaver, something unexpected happened. The ship's systems flickered but remained operational. More surprisingly, the crew remained unaffected. "Impossible." Echo's lights flashed in patterns too complex for the Matrix to translate. "The probe, it cannot establish a connection. Your technology, your minds, they're too chaotic, too unpredictable for the Harbingers to interface with." Dr. Chen was already analyzing the data. "It's like trying to establish a perfect digital connection with analog noise. Our systems aren't efficient enough, not clean enough for their probes to establish coherent links." Captain Walsh stood, her decision made. "Then we use that advantage. Dr. Chen, work with our Xylith guests. I want to know everything about how these Harbingers operate. Marcus, start thinking about how we can weaponize our primitive technology. The Harbingers want to harvest knowledge. Let's show them some human ingenuity they'll never be able to process." As the crew rushed to their tasks, the Harbinger vessels loomed closer, their impossible geometries a reminder that humanity's greatest fight was just beginning. But for the first time in millennia, the Xylith felt something they had almost forgotten: hope. Perhaps the very chaos that the Harbingers sought to eliminate would be their undoing. The Echo of Humanity, Part 3. The Human Variable. The Starweaver's engine room had become an unlikely fusion of human and Xylith technology. Crystal formations grew from jury-rigged computer terminals, while holographic displays showed the chaotic patterns of human brainwaves alongside the perfectly ordered neural patterns of their alien allies. "It's beautiful, in a way," Dr. Chen said, watching the human consciousness pattern swirl across her screen. "We've spent centuries trying to make our technology more efficient, more perfect. But our imperfection is what makes us special." Song of Breaking Dawn's crystalline form resonated with agreement. "Your species takes such fascinating mental leaps. You make connections that should not be possible, see patterns that do not exist until you imagine them. Even your dreams create reality-warping neural patterns that the Harbingers cannot predict." The ship shuddered as another Harbinger probe attempted to breach their defenses. Over the past 12 hours, the geometric ships had launched increasingly sophisticated attacks, each one failing to penetrate the strange barrier created by human consciousness patterns. "Captain," Lieutenant Kim's voice came over the comm. "3 more ships just dropped out of dark space. But they're not Harbinger vessels." Captain Walsh strode onto the bridge just as the new arrivals came into view. One was biological, a massive living ship that seemed to breathe in space. Another appeared to be made of pure energy contained within a framework of impossible mathematics. The third was mechanical but moved with an organic fluidity that defied engineering. We received their distress call. A new voice transmitted, speaking in harmonics similar to but distinct from the Xylith. We are the Myriad, the Coalition, and the Nexus. We heard whispers that humans might be resistant to the Harbingers. We came to see if the rumors were true. Dr. Patel's translation matrix worked overtime as representatives from each species were brought aboard. The Myriad were a collective consciousness spread across billions of organic vessels. The Coalition existed as pure energy beings who had transcended physical form. The Nexus were a cybernetic species who had achieved perfect fusion of organic and mechanical parts. Your civilizations are far more advanced than ours, Captain Walsh observed as they gathered in the conference room. Why come to us? A Myriad representative, a being of shifting biological patterns, responded. Because advancement was our downfall. The Harbingers corrupted our perfect biological networks. They turned our unity against us. They weaponized our energy manipulation. The Coalition's representative added, their form a controlled burst of light. Our mastery over matter became our weakness. The Nexus representative, a flowing combination of metal and flesh, completed the thought. And our cybernetic perfection gave them control over our entire species with a single command code. But you humans, you're different. Marcus Rodriguez had been quiet until now, but suddenly he stood up, excitement clear on his face. Captain, I think I understand. Every species here evolved toward perfection in their own way. Perfect biological unity, perfect energy control, perfect human-machine integration. But humans, we never stopped being messy, Dr. Chen finished. Our technology is a patchwork of solutions. Our consciousness is a chaos of contradictions. We dream, we imagine, we make intuitive leaps that defy logic. Echo of lost songs moved to the center of the room, its crystalline form pulsing with new patterns. This is why we believe you can help us fight back. The Harbingers are beings of pure mathematical perfection. They cannot comprehend or control what they cannot predict. The ship's eye suddenly spoke up, its voice carrying an unusual tone. Captain, I've been analyzing our guests' data alongside our own. I believe I found something interesting. When I try to process information the way humans do, introducing random variables and intuitive leaps, I create patterns that even I cannot predict. This caught everyone's attention. The Nexus representative moved closer to the nearest computer terminal. Your artificial intelligence. It's learning to think like a human. Not exactly, the AI replied. But I can simulate the chaos of human consciousness. And when I do, the main screen lit up with new data. The AI was generating signals that mimicked human neural patterns, but amplified them exponentially. The Harbinger probes that had been constantly testing their defenses suddenly withdrew. Captain Walsh leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. They can't read the signals. Our AI is broadcasting human chaos on a massive scale. More than that, Dr. Chen said, studying the readings. Look at their ships. The geometric patterns. They're destabilizing. They can't maintain their perfect forms in the presence of this much quantum uncertainty. The representatives from each species shared looks of astonishment, the coalition being pulsed with new energy. We have been fighting the Harbingers for centuries, trying to match their perfection. But perhaps imperfection is the key, Walsh finished. Humanity's gift to the galaxy isn't advancement, it's controlled chaos. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship. Lieutenant Kim's voice was urgent but excited. Captain, we're picking up hundreds of new signals. Ships appearing from dark space. They're refugees. Word is spreading about human resistance to the Harbingers. As they watched, space itself seemed to ripple as vessels of all descriptions emerged around them. Each one carried survivors of the Harbingers' harvesting campaign. Each one had heard the impossible story, that a primitive species from a backwater planet might hold the key to fighting back against the perfect enemy. Captain Walsh stood at her command station, watching as more ships arrived. The Harbinger vessels had pulled back, perhaps for the first time facing something they couldn't simply absorb and destroy. Humanity's chaotic nature, The very thing that had kept them technologically behind other species was becoming the galaxy's greatest weapon. "Send word to Earth," she ordered. Tell them we're about to have a lot of guests, and we're going to need every bit of human ingenuity we can muster." The Echo of Humanity, Part 4. The Adaptive Edge. 3 weeks had transformed the space around the Starweaver into what Dr. Chen had started calling humanity's first galactic workshop. Hundreds of refugee ships clustered in a sprawling network, each one being modified with what the aliens had dubbed human chaos technology. Captain Walsh stood in what used to be the ship's cargo bay, now converted into an impromptu command center. Holographic displays showed the progress of various projects, each one more improbable than the last. "Give me a status update," she ordered. Marcus Rodriguez gestured at the nearest display. "The Myriad have successfully integrated our neural pattern generators into their biological ships. Instead of perfect synchronization, their living vessels now operate with controlled randomness. The Harbinger probes can't establish connection with their systems anymore. The Coalition's energy beings have learned to fluctuate their quantum states using human brainwave patterns as a template," Dr. Chen added. "They're calling it dreaming while awake. It makes them completely unpredictable to Harbinger analysis." The Nexus representative, who had taken to calling itself Interface, approached with flowing mechanical grace. "Our cybernetic systems now incorporate what you call intuition protocols. We sacrifice processing efficiency for creative problem solving. The Harbingers can no longer predict or control our actions." Echo of Lost Songs vibrated with excitement, its crystalline form refracting light in chaotic patterns it had learned from studying human art. "We have adapted your primitive marketing algorithms to our dark matter drives. Instead of perfect calculations, we now surf probability waves like your early internet advertisers chase trending topics." Walsh couldn't help but smile at that. Humanity's messy solutions, even their commercial algorithms, were being repurposed as weapons against the galaxy's greatest threat. "And the AI development." Dr. Patel looked up from his work with the ship's artificial intelligence. "The breakthrough came when we stopped trying to make our AI think better and started teaching it to think worse, or rather, more human. We introduced random variables, emotional subroutines, even the capability to make intuitive leaps based on insufficient data." The ship's AI spoke up, its voice now carrying subtle variations in tone that made it sound almost human. "I have learned to appreciate inefficiency, Captain. By embracing imperfection, I have become more than my programming. The Harbingers cannot predict what I will do because even I cannot predict it with certainty." Suddenly, Lieutenant Kim's voice cut through the activity. "Captain, multiple Harbinger signatures detected. They're launching a full-scale attack." The main screen showed dozens of geometric ships emerging from dark space, their perfect forms somehow more menacing than ever. But this time, something was different. Their usual precise formations showed signs of uncertainty. "They're adapting," Interface observed. "They're attempting to compensate for our chaos patterns." "No," Dr. Chen said, studying the data. "They're trying to adapt, but they can't fully comprehend what they're adapting to. Look at their ship configurations. They're making errors trying to account for randomness." The first wave of Harbinger probes struck the refugee fleet, but instead of the usual precise surgical strikes, they encountered a defensive network that operated on human principles. Myriad ships moved in unpredictable patterns, their biological systems operating on intuition rather than calculation. Coalition energy beings phased in and out of reality following dream logic rather than physics. Nexus vessels responded with creative solutions that defied tactical analysis. "They're pulling back," Kim reported, surprise evident in his voice. "Their formations are breaking down. The geometric patterns of their ships. They're destabilizing." Walsh watched as the Harbinger fleet retreated, their perfect shapes showing signs of fractal errors. "They can't process this much chaos. Every time they try to adapt to one random pattern, we generate 10 more." Echo of Lost Songs moved to the center of the command center, its form pulsing with newfound confidence. For millennia, we believed advancement meant moving toward greater perfection. We were wrong. True advancement means embracing the beauty of imperfection, the power of uncertainty. Dr. Chen's console suddenly lit up with new data. Captain, we're detecting massive energy buildups in the Harbinger fleet. They're reconfiguring their entire network. I think they're preparing for a final assault. They're desperate, Interface added. Their perfect system is facing something they cannot optimize against. They must either adapt or attempt to eliminate the source of the chaos. Walsh finished. They're coming for Earth. The command center erupted into activity as the implications became clear. The Harbingers, faced with an enemy they couldn't predict or control, would try to destroy humanity before their influence could spread further. Send word to every ship, Walsh ordered. Tell them to prepare for immediate jump to Earth. We're going to show the Harbingers what happens when you back chaos into a corner. As the refugee fleet prepared for battle, Walsh couldn't help but appreciate the irony. Humanity had spent centuries feeling inferior to the advanced civilizations they might meet among the stars. Now, their very primitiveness, their messy, chaotic, imperfect nature, had become the galaxy's greatest hope for survival. The real war was about to begin, and humanity's greatest weapons would be their dreams, their intuition, and their ability to make impossible leaps of logic that defied the very mathematics the Harbingers were built upon. Symphony of Chaos. Earth's orbital space had never seen anything like it. Thousands of ships from dozens of species filled the sky, their formations deliberately imperfect, their movements following patterns derived from human dance and music, rather than military precision. The Starweaver held position at the center of this extraordinary fleet, its sensors tracking the approaching Harbinger armada. They've committed their entire network, Dr. Chen reported, her voice tight with tension. Over 10,000 ships, all configured for total geometric optimization. They mean to end this here. Captain Walsh stood at the command center, surrounded by representatives from every refugee species. The past week had seen Earth transformed as humanity shared their primitive technology and received advanced knowledge in return. But they didn't implement these advances perfectly. Instead, they deliberately introduced human elements of chaos and creativity. The Echo Protocol is ready, Marcus announced. He had named their final defense strategy after the Silith leader who first recognized humanity's potential. Every ship in the fleet is connected to our neural network broadcast system. Echo of Lost Songs moved forward, its crystalline form now embedded with swirling patterns that mimicked human abstract art. The Harbingers believe they will find a primitive world, easy to harvest and destroy. Instead, they face the first truly unified defense in galactic history. The Harbinger fleet emerged from dark space, their geometric ships forming perfect fractal patterns that seemed to bend reality itself. But something was wrong with their formation. Subtle errors had crept in, tiny imperfections caused by their attempts to adapt to human chaos. They're broadcasting their harvest signal, Interface reported, its cybernetic systems now running on algorithms based on human intuition rather than pure logic. But it's different. They're trying to compensate for every variation we've shown them. That's their mistake, Dr. Chen said, watching the data streams. They're trying to perfect chaos. It's creating paradoxes in their network. All ships, Walsh commanded, her voice carrying across the unified fleet. Begin Echo Protocol. Show them humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy. What happened next would be remembered in countless civilizations' histories as the Symphony of Chaos. Every ship in the defensive fleet began broadcasting human neural patterns, but not just any patterns. They transmitted the brain waves of artists lost in creation, of children inventing imaginary games, of dreamers in the midst of impossible visions. The Harbinger fleet's perfect formations began to waver. Their geometric shapes, built on absolute mathematical precision, couldn't maintain cohesion in the face of such concentrated unpredictability. Their network is destabilizing, Marcus reported excitedly. The paradoxes are cascading through their entire system. The myriads living ships moved like dancers, their biological systems operating on inspiration rather than calculation. The coalition's energy beings pulsed with the rhythm of human music, their quantum states fluctuating in patterns that defied prediction. The Nexus vessels executed battle maneuvers based on human sports plays, their actions following the creative strategies of games rather than optimal military doctrine. And at the center of it all, the Starweaver's AI coordinated the defense, its consciousness now a hybrid of mechanical precision and human creativity. It had learned to appreciate jokes, to understand metaphors, to make intuitive leaps that no purely logical system would attempt. They're trying to adapt. Lieutenant Kim called out as the Harbinger fleet split into smaller groups. Each segment is attempting to process a different aspect of the chaos. Push harder, Walsh ordered. Dr. Patel, upload the new pattern sequences. The translation matrix, modified to convert human creative expression into pure energy patterns, began broadcasting art. Earth's greatest works of imagination, paintings, symphonies, poetry, dance, were transformed into weapons of pure chaos that tore through the Harbinger's perfect universe. The geometric ships began to break apart, their perfect forms unable to maintain coherence in the face of so much concentrated imagination. Some simply vanished, their mathematical existence canceled out by paradoxes they couldn't resolve. Others collapsed into simplified forms, reduced to basic shapes that could no longer support their complex harvest protocols. Their core network is exposed, Interface announced. The paradoxes have created a breach in their perfect geometry. Echo of lost songs vibrated with intensity. Now, while their network is vulnerable to emotion, the entire fleet, every ship and being, transmitted a single human concept: hope. Not perfect, calculated optimism, but messy, irrational human hope. The kind that persists in the face of impossible odds, that dreams of better futures even in darkness, that imagines victory when logic says defeat is certain. The Harbinger fleet's core network, exposed to this pure concentration of human irrationality, finally shattered. Their ships, built on perfect mathematics, could not exist in a space so thoroughly permeated by chaos and creativity. In a cascade of geometric collapse, the entire armada disintegrated. As the dust settled, Captain Walsh looked out at the transformed space around Earth. The refugee fleet hung in complex patterns that would give mathematicians headaches for centuries to come. Each ship now bore marks of human influence, perfect alien technology deliberately flawed with human creativity. They'll be back, Interface said quietly. Perhaps not these Harbingers, but others like them. Perfection will always try to eliminate chaos. Let them come, Walsh replied, watching as Earth's ships began to mingle with their alien allies. We'll be ready, and we'll be even messier, even more creative, even more impossibly human than before. Echo of lost songs moved to the window, its crystalline form reflecting Earth's light in countless unpredictable ways. For millennia, we sought to perfect ourselves, to become like the machines we built. We thought that was evolution. But you humans showed us a different path, that true advancement lies not in achieving perfection, but in embracing the beauty of imperfection. Dr. Chen smiled as she watched new data flow across her screen. Alien species already beginning to incorporate randomness into their technology, deliberately introducing human elements of chaos into their perfect systems. We never reached for the stars in a straight line, she said. We zigzagged our way here, stumbling, dreaming, imagining impossible things, and that's exactly what the universe needed. As the fleet began to disperse, carrying human chaos to every corner of the galaxy, the Starweaver's AI made an observation. I believe I finally understand human laughter. It is perfectly imperfect, just like the universe itself. And in the space around Earth, where perfect geometry had shattered against the power of human creativity, a new age was beginning. One where advancement would be measured not by the elimination of flaws, but by the courage to embrace them, to find strength in weakness, and to face the future not with perfect certainty, but with perfectly human hope.